Hello all, very good evening. Online students, am I audible? Okay. So today we'll start with unit 2.1, that is culture. More or less, this is something that we have already read through 10 theories. Okay, it's all encapsulation of whatever we have read with some new ideas. Okay, before we begin, I just want to discuss एक दो questions जो हम लोगों ने पीछे discuss करने थे. First one is the last question that I asked you to write yesterday. That is conspicuous consumption and impact on distributive justice and construction of power. So have you written anything? तो कुछ ideas बताओ उसमें क्या क्या लिख सकते हैं, क्या कैसे करना चाहिए, क्या बताना चाहिए उसमें? Potlatch. Okay, yes. वो तो straight forward था. हाँ. Big man और power. Yes. Positional power, non positional power को आप यूज कर सकते हो. हाँ. और कोई? Distributive justice we can go for. So जिन लोगों ने नहीं लिखा है, I'll just give you some pointers. Okay, dictate कर देता हूँ कुछ pointers. You can just write it and accordingly उसके हिसाब से एक बार वापस आप अपना आंसर को स्ट्रक्चर कर सकते हो. You can just structure it. So this idea of conspicuous consumption was given by Veblen. You must have heard about this person, Veblen goods. So these are those goods that do not follow the law of supply and demand. Okay, law of supply and demand में क्या होता है? That is, if the demand rises, okay, and the supply is less, then in that case the price of the product will go up. Okay, so supply and demand will decide the price of that particular. But here in this case, what actually happens is the goods do not follow the law of supply and demand वाला case. Okay, demand बहुत ज़्यादा है, but supply these are very मतलब ये price जो in product का जो price है that do not reflects its utility. Okay, and this conspicuous Veblen goods basically they are products of the leisure class, what he says, and he has given this idea in the book Theory of Leisure Class. ठीक है, तो आप this लिख सकते हो, conspicuous consumption is an act of displaying ostentatious wealth to gain status and reputation in the society. To gain status and reputation in the society. The idea was given by Thomas Veblen. The idea was given by Thomas Veblen in his book Theory of Leisure Class. Thomas Veblen, in his book Theory of Leisure Class. So in this book Theory of Leisure Class, Veblen also talks about or says that this conspicuous consumption, this is not a modern day phenomena. It is something that goes back to the tribal period. ठीक है, ट्राइबल टाइम से ये चलता आ रहा है. सो कंस्पिक्यूअस का मतलब यही होता है कि दिखाना, मींस टू डिस्प्ले समथिंग. ओके, एंड दैट डिस्प्ले इज फॉर सम पीपल टू रियलाइज योर स्टेटस. ओके, सो आप कुछ ब्रांड्स पहन रहे हो, कुछ गाड़ियां खरीद रहे हो, और द वर्ड स्वैग जिसको कहते हैं, दैट इज अ क्लियर कट डिपिक्शन ऑफ कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन. ओके, कि यू हैव सम कार और जहां पे उसका लोगो उस ब्रांड से मतलब उस कार से ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है, दैट लोगो. ओके, एंड आपने सुना होगा रोल्स रॉयस और से जैगुआर का जो आगे का जो जैगुआर जो सिंबल है, दैट इन इटसेल्फ कॉस्ट अराउंड 6 to 7 लाख, अगर वो गायब हो जाए तो. ओके, एंड रोल्स रॉयस का जो सिंबल है दैट आल्सो इज अप्रॉक्सिमेटली ऑफ द सेम प्राइस, दैट लोगो ओनली. So here the brand is more important. In this case, when Veblen was giving this idea, so he suggested that these kind of consumption, whenever in a society will happen, it will automatically lead to, or it will happen whenever there is an unequal distribution of resources. हमेशा तभी होगा ये, wherein the possession of resources has to be shown by some mechanism. So one mechanism that comes forward is conspicuous consumption. मतलब जब society में unequal distribution of resource होगा, people will definitely show it off. And how to show it off? It has to be done by act of conspicuous consumption. वो कैसे बताएंगे कि मेरे पास ज़्यादा है ऐसा और resources or whatever it is. Okay, how? So you cannot hold a tag, right? कि मेरे बैंक अकाउंट में इतने पैसे हैं. But you can tell the people that I own so much of money by wearing such goods. अभी आप 100 करोड़ के मालिक हो या 200 करोड़ के मालिक हो, and you are wearing like सिंपल से कपड़े पहन के जा रहे हो, तो nobody can predict. But if you आप पोर्श गाड़ी से उतर रहे हो and you have say अरमानी, गुची और इस टाइप के ब्रांड्स पहने हुए हैं, so then definitely person will claim that ये आदमी कुछ he seems to be high five, belongs to the upper class. So it actually shows you will be moving in a group of people who have relatively lesser amount of resources or who control relatively lesser amount of resources than you have. And by the act of conspicuous consumption, you will actually display your wealth. And that might, अब वो wealth definitely कैसे power construct करेगी? Basically it's because everybody in that society is seeking it. तभी तो वो wealth है. अगर कोई wealth नहीं है तो means if nobody is seeking that, so in that case the surplus of it is not at all of any importance. ठीक है, it's the surplus of what everybody else in the society is seeking. हमारी society में for example everybody is seeking currency, तो आपके पास हो जाता है. ठीक है, in that case you will be displaying it. And in such other societies where the currency is not that important, people will be seeking prestige, and by excess of resources you might be gaining prestige, but you show it off first. Okay, so conspicuous consumption will happen in unequal distribution of resources. First condition ये है, and second, due to this display of wealth will be important. Yes, prestige economy, हमारी सोसाइटी में prestige economy नहीं है. It's a class economy. It's one case of conspicuous consumption wherein you are earning in terms of prestige. Here in such case, यहाँ पे it's not necessary, हमारी सोसाइटी prestige economy नहीं है, it's a class economy. Okay, लेकिन आप conspicuous consumption basically आप देखो कभी आप ट्रैफिक सिग्नल पे देखो. Okay, आप कौन सी गाड़ी पे हो और जब हवलदार या पुलिस वाला आपको रोकेगा, so the way he will use, the terms he will use actually depends upon the car or the vehicle that you are using. आप Honda Activa पे हो तो तू करके बात करेगा, ठीक है. हाँ, मतलब फीमेल तो बात अलग ही हो जाती है, दिल्ली में और खास करके, हाँ, बट यूपी में तो सीरियसली, यूपी हरियाणा और ये सब जगह में तो Honda Activa से तो तू करके बात करे, ठीक है. और स्प्लेंडर वेंडर से तो एकदम ही वो आप जोमेटो का डिलीवरी बॉय समझ रहे हैं आपको, ठीक है. बट सपोजिटली यू आर इन पोर्श और मे बी फेरारी या इस टाइप की कार में हो या ऑडी BMW समथिंग लाइक दैट, तो इन दैट केस वो आपको ऑटोमेटिकली सर बुला के बात करेगा. He knows that this person who is riding in BMW Audi, so he might definitely ring a call or call somebody जो पोजीशन पे बैठा होगा, तो वहाँ पे उसकी टर्मिनोलॉजी वहीं से डिसाइड होती है. That is power. Okay, so remember Foucault's idea that power is a part of every social interaction. हर जगह पे power है. Okay, it's not only the political power that we should be talking about. It's available, it's visible in all the interactions. आप भी if somebody is coming to talk to you, जब आप लोग civil servants हो जाओगे, so then there is a person जो थोड़ा सा मैले कुचले कपड़े पहन के आ रहा है, गरीब है. Okay, आप definitely आप भी authority उस पे दिखाओगे. And then there comes a person जिसके पीछे 3-4 बॉडीगार्ड्स आ रहे हैं. ओके, एंड वो पप्पी लहरी जैसे सोने की चेन पहन के बैठा हुआ है, एंड ऑटोमेटिकली आप भी उसको सर बोल के बात करोगे। आप आईएएस हो तब भी आप सर बोल के बात करोगे, बिकॉज दैट पर्सन बाय हिज आउटसाइड अपीयरेंस सीम्स टू बी ए इन्फ्लुएंशियल पर्सन। ऑटोमेटिकली पावर इक्वेशन एकदम पलट जाती है। जहां पे एक बंदा आपसे रिसोर्सेज में कम है, आप वहां पे अपनी अथॉरिटी दिखाओगे बीइंग आईएएस ऑफिसर, बट द अदर वे अराउंड व्हेन यू सी दैट द पर्सन दैट हु इज सिटिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू माइट बी सम इन्फ्लुएंशियल वन, इमीडिएटली योर पावर इक्वेशन रिवर्स डाउन और आप उसको सर बोलने लगते हो। ही विल इन रिस्पेक्ट आपको सर ही बोलेगा, बट आप भी उसको सर बोल रहे होगे। दिस हैपेंस, ओके। लेकिन आप किसी किसान को सर बोल के बात नहीं करोगे। आई एम टेलिंग यू दिस इज द फैक्ट, ओके। वहां पे बहुत ज्यादा क्लोज होने के लिए और जस्ट टू रिस्पेक्ट देम, जैसे यूपी में होता है चाचा बोल देते हैं, अरे चाचा बैठो, बट द रिस्पेक्ट एलिमेंट इज मिसिंग, द पावर इक्वेशन डेफिनेटली इज ऑन योर साइड, and it's only because of the conspicuous consumption, the other case you will be behaving with that person in different manner, okay? So आपको सिर्फ political power की बात नहीं करनी है। The example which you have put it is only the political examples, but remember power is not limited only in case of politics. We have already discussed this, don't miss this statement, और ये side statements नहीं है, ये बहुत important है। power हर social interaction का part है, okay, and that should be mentioned in the answer specifically, that how power is part of every social interaction, and जहाँ पे आपका जो non verbal behavior है, it changes in front of a person who displays his wealth आपके सामने। तो गाड़ी किस गाड़ी से उतर रहा है, दो चार गार्ड्स हैं, दो चार उसके साथ में अटेंडेंट्स हैं, तो ऑटोमेटिकली आपका पावर इक्वेशन बदल जाएगा। I hope I'm making sense to you. Okay, so just like this. According to Veblen, people consume certain goods. People consume certain goods, in bracket you can write Veblen goods. People consume certain goods in order to flaunt one's wealth. In order to flaunt one's wealth. The act of conspicuous consumption. The act of conspicuous consumption is not a modern phenomena. Is not a modern phenomena, but goes back to tribal era. But goes back to tribal era. The objects of consumption, however, have changed. The objects of consumption, however, have changed. ठीक है, ये आपका बेसिक इंट्रो हो गया। ओके, नेक्स्ट पैरा। According to Veblen, people consume certain goods. People consume certain goods for two reasons. For two reasons. The first reason is to be recognized by their peers. To be recognized by their peers. Second, to achieve higher social status. To achieve higher social status. Okay, next point. According to Karl Marx, यहाँ पे आप मार्क्स का आइडिया यूज कर सकते हो। Okay, according to Karl Marx, status and class are the source of power in a society. Status and class are source of power in the society. It comes with control of resources. It comes with control of resources. The owner expresses superiority over non-owners, or have nots का जो है. Okay, the one who have it will express the superiority over the one who do not have it. Okay, the owner express superiority over non-owners. ठीक है. So आप, if you remember, we have talked about the stages of evolution as given by Karl Marx. Remember, it was primitive communism where everybody was owning or everybody was equal. Then come master slave. So वहां पे conspicuous consumption किस फॉर्म में है? The number of slaves a master has. जितने ज्यादा slaves, उतना बड़ा वो आदमी हो गया. Okay, तो आपने वो मूवीज देखी होंगी, ग्लैडिएटर और several other kind of movies wherein the authority of a master depended upon the number of slaves that he owned, and it has been depicted, it has been documented that कौन सबसे बड़ा राजा या कौन सबसे बड़ा आदमी होता था, वो बेसिकली वो जिसके स्लेव सबसे ज्यादा होंगे. So there were depictions, और इनफैक्ट ऐसे ही आप देखोगे कि medieval era में इंडिया में भी ऐसा था in the form of slavery, which was actually modified into what is called a mansabdari system. तो मनसब कौन, वहां पे एक पर्टिकुलर नंबर अलॉट कर देता था कि ये मनसब रैंक मिलेगी, इसका मतलब दैट विल बी 2000 आपको गार्ड्स मिल जाएंगे, और मे बी 4000 गार्ड्स मिल जाएंगे with so many slaves, right? So what does this show? The greater the number of slaves that you have, the greater will be your authority and power. It's a conspicuous consumption. अब आप आदमी को इतने सारे slaves की क्या जरूरत है? What will he do with those much slaves? It's only a show, मतलब एक डिस्प्ले है आपकी रैंक का. ओके, सो और वही आपका पावर इक्वेशन बेसिकली वो दिखा रहा है. अभी आपका घर कितना बड़ा है इन दिल्ली? इफ यू हैव लाइक से नॉर्मली जो मिडिल क्लास लोगों के घर होते हैं 100 गज के होते हैं, 100 गज इज 900 स्क्वायर फीट. दैट इज व्हाट a middle class person can actually afford to. But eventually if you earn so much of money and you get your house maybe of 500 500 गज या maybe 600 गज, that is 5000 6000 स्क्वायर फीट के आसपास का घर, immediately the power equation will reverse. अब उतने बड़े घर में एक अकेला आदमी क्या करेगा? That doesn't matter. But the thing is कि you need to, मतलब that the possession of that property, that resource is kind of speaking a lot about you, your authority, your power and all that stuff. Okay, that's right. In simple societies, the conspicuous consumption is visible. एक पहला एग्जांपल क्वाक्यूट, पोटलाच. Second, big man based societies. Okay, then in modern society या medieval and modern societies, तो medieval societies के cases है. First one, estate system. You must have read about this estate system that was prevalent in France before French Revolution. So there was a clergy, there was nobility. So clergy class वो kind of hereditary थी. So clergy का ही बेटा clergy बनेगा, they were exempted from tax system. Tax हमेशा commoners देंगे. okay, the common man, and जिसके बदले में they protested, they basically went to the king's palace, okay, and that is how they revolted, and that is how the French Revolution actually began. So the state system. So ये जो लॉन का आइडिया आया है, this idea we have borrowed from Europe कि लॉन, आप समझते हो कि आप लोग, हम सबके एस्पिरेशन है that we have a house that should have a lawn, right? घर के आगे लॉन होना चाहिए, हम सब एस्पायर करते हैं, we all have that कि ये गार्डन होना जरूरी है. Now this idea of lawn has been borrowed from nobility of Europe because they were the first one who devised this practice कि घर के आगे एक लॉन बनाएंगे जहाँ पे ग्रास वगैरह होगी, and that where they will be reading the newspaper or something whatever and will be having a sip of tea, इस तरीके का, and that we also aspire for it. अब ये conspicuous consumption था just to display their wealth to the commoners कि commoners basically एक रूम दो रूम वाले घर में रह रहे हैं and I have a space extra enough to have a lawn at my house itself. Okay, so it was the first time the state system brought this idea, and this is a clear cut example of conspicuous. और आप देखो conspicuous consumption में किसी ने अपने घर के ऊपर हेलीपैड बना दिया है, and we know बहुत सारे ऐसे केसेस हैं, ठीक है, अंबानी. अब ये अंटीला जो है, that's a clear cut case of conspicuous consumption, $3 billion approx, so 18,000 करोड़ का घर है वो, सॉरी 24,000 करोड़ रुपए, अब तो रुपये डिप्रिशिएट भी करता जा रहा है, कॉम्बो एकदम डेडली है अंबानी मोदी का. So that case you can understand it's a clear cut case of conspicuous consumption, 27 crores just for people, 5 लोग. Okay, so that's a symbolic gesture, ठीक है. यहाँ पे तो स्टेट सिस्टम है, दूसरा मास्टर स्लेव, okay, and modern societies. So modern societies, the first case is grand weddings, big fat Indian weddings, okay. So वहाँ पे here people particularly arrange, मतलब वो जानबूझ के इतना पैसा खर्च कर रहे होते हैं, that's a message to the society कि देख भाई मेरी इतनी औकात है, okay, and they very well accept dowries, and the father of the bride also will be just making sure कि वो जो dowry है वो एकदम grand होनी चाहिए. So they will be picking the latest model of any car जो भी अभी सबसे ज़्यादा डिमांड में है, मे बी depending upon their हैसियत जितनी भी है, तो फॉर्च्यूनर और समथिंग से बियॉन्ड दैट में भी जैगुआर दे रहे होंगे, और मे बी बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा है तो 3-4 जैगुआर एक ही कलर की दे दी या अलग-अलग कलर की दे दी, and this has happened, okay. So these grand weddings are the message to the public, to the local masses that this is our authority, okay, this is the power that we possess, okay, and this will actually lead the people to treat the one in a different manner. तो वहाँ पे ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाता है कि ये आदमी बहुत अमीर है, तो जो लोअर मिडिल क्लास है या लोअर क्लास है, they will immediately start calling him साहब साहब. आई एम टेलिंग यू अबाउट द लोकल आइडियाज. लोकल में ऐसा होता है कि साहब बोलना शुरू कर देंगे कि वो, और वहाँ पे इमीडिएटली जब आप ऐसी शादी में जा रहे होते हैं तो सब उसकी नेटवर्क कैलकुलेट कर रहे होते हैं कि भाई की नेटवर्क कितनी है, 100-200 करोड़ का आदमी तो होगा ही होगा, ओके. सो दीज ग्रैंड वेडिंग्स, देन other cases, the idea of which we have not read yet, we'll be reading it in paper 2, dominant caste. We'll be talking about it, but just to give you an idea, glimpse of dominant caste, here the dominant caste refers to those communities which might be वर्ण सिस्टम में उनकी पोजीशन लो होती है, they might be in वैश्य और शूद्र category, but they have earned a lot of money due to some reasons. Let's take the example of jats. So according to varna category they are shudra, okay, they belong to peasant categories, ठीक है. So they are neither brahmin, kshatriya nor vaishya, peasant community थे, shudra community को belong करते हैं, and minded shudra does not means dalit, they are outside the varna scheme. Dalits and untouchables, they do not belong to either of the varna. आपने वर्ड सुना होगा सवर्ण और अवर्ण. So dalits, they do not belong to varna. वर्ण वाले जितने हैं वो सवर्ण जाति वाले लोग हैं, वो बेसिकली उन चारों कैटेगरीज में दलित वगैरह फॉल नहीं करते. that is called as the पंचम वर्ण, to whom dalits or untouchables belong, okay. So this, अब क्या हुआ कि पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस व्हाट हैपेंड, लैंड रिफॉर्म्स हैपेंड, एंड वो ओनरशिप एक्चुअली चेंज ए लॉट ऑफ, तो बहुत बड़े-बड़े जमींदार एक्चुअली चले गए. देन ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन हैपेंड, so a lot of money came to these जाट कम्युनिटी, ठीक है, ड्यू टू रेम्यूनरेशन एंड ऑल दैट स्टफ. नाउ इन दिस सिनेरियो मोर ओवर डेमोक्रेसी आल्सो हैपेंड, और वहां से हरियाणा का स्टेट डिवीजन होना. रिमेंबर अर्लियर देयर वाज अ स्टेट कॉल्ड एज पेप्सू, ओके. उसमें से पहले कुछ एरिया चला गया हिमाचल को, और उसके बाद उस पंजाब और हरियाणा का डिवीजन हो जाता है, ओके. एंड हरियाणा एरिया व्हिच वाज डोमिनेटेड बाय द जाट कम्युनिटी, नाउ दे आल्सो हैव न्यूमेरिकल प्रीपोंडेरेंस इन दैट एरिया, सो दे गेन पॉलिटिकल पावर, और पैसा भी था, नंबर्स भी थे, एंड दे रोज इन पावर. और ऐसे भी एट विलेज लेवल आल्सो, व्हेनेवर ए कास्ट वांट्स टू असर्ट इट अथॉरिटी, तो हाउ डज इट डू दैट? तो पहला, अगर उसके पास इकोनॉमी कंट्रोल है, इट कंट्रोल्स द इकोनॉमी, इमीडिएटली दे विल बिल्ड सम टेंपल्स. अपने गांव में एक मंदिर बनाएंगे जो अपने कुल देवता या देवी की होगी, एंड दे विल हायर ए पंडित और ब्राह्मण to do the needful services in that particular temple, and or they will also organize a big feast in which the pandits from all the nearby regions will be called महाभोज जिसको कहते हैं, और वहां पे बुला के उन पंडितों को खाना खिलाया जाएगा. अब आप समझो, here it speaks a lot because when the Brahmin accepts the cooked food from your hand, the Brahmin has already accepted or assert kind of acknowledge the ritual status of that caste equivalent to him, क्योंकि कास्ट में there is restrictions on receiving food, cooked food आप अपने से बराबर या अपने से ऊंची कास्ट से ही ले सकते हो, अपने से लोअर कास्ट से आप सिर्फ अनकुक्ड फूड ले सकते हो. And the moment Brahmin accepts food from your hand, cooked food that too, so automatically the Brahmins have acknowledged your status to be, ritual status to be equivalent to the Brahmins. So automatically वहाँ पे उनकी status assert हो जाती है, okay, and they assert their dominant character. So this is again through conspicuous consumption, that is construction of temples और farm houses बनवा लेना अपने गांव में, okay. So आप देखोगे कि हरियाणा में ऐसे ही हो रखा है कि खेत है, वहाँ पे किले के हिसाब से जमीन होती है, तो वहाँ पे 15 किला 20 किला जमीन है, और उस बीच में एक बढ़िया फार्म हाउस बना, एंड आसपास पूरा खेत है, okay. So अभी एक वो मूवी आई, आपने मूवी देखी होगी, आई गेस, बबली बाउंसर करके, यार मूवीज वगैरह देखा करो, उसमें सब बहुत कुछ क्लियरली डिपिक्ट किया जाता है, एग्जांपल भी ईजी रहते हैं. चलो ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, let's go for some other example. So this dominant caste का जो idea है, that is clear cut case of conspicuous consumption. It's through this conspicuous consumption only they will be asserting their authority, or they will be asserting the unequal distribution of power in politics, in economy, in all the other social interactions, okay. So you can quote these examples, that simple societies, medieval and modern societies, okay. I just want to highlight one case study that was done by a scholar, Clement Bell. The name of this study is Less Food for More Status, just like this, Less Food for More Status, Caste Inequality and caste inequality and conspicuous consumption in India. Caste inequality and conspicuous consumption in India. So in this study, what Clement Bell highlights is that she actually studied in slums वगैरह में देखा उन्होंने, तो देखा कि slums are usually occupied by lower caste people, ठीक है, वहाँ पे भी caste visibility आपको दिखती है, and here in slums the youth is spending most of their revenue not on good food but on objects of conspicuous consumption. So आप कभी if you ever get a chance to go to any slum, okay, you will see that they might not be eating very nutritious food, but you will find this TV on everybody's house, ठीक है, LED screen आपको हर घर में मिलेगी, smartphone everybody is owning, and also bikes almost हर youth के पास होगी वहाँ पे, it's necessary. Okay, moreover the clothes they will be wearing, हो सकता है Adidas की जगह Adidas पहना हो, but they know this, okay, that these brands do create an impression, so they will be spending more on the goods of conspicuous consumption rather than their daily necessities. Okay, so that is they also are aware that this conspicuous consumption is necessary for showcase of one's status. Okay, and that definitely impacts one's stand in any kind of social interaction. Okay, so these are the examples that you can quote. Next is the next part is yes, गोल्ड एक्यूमुलेशन अगर आप दिखाओगे तो कंस्पिक्यूअस है वो, क्या आप अपने घर में एक मतलब विजिबल वो ट्रांसपेरेंट अलमीरा रख दिया घर के बाहर और वहाँ पे आपने गोल्ड ब्रिक्स रख दिए, तब वो कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन है, या फिर आपने अपनी गोल्ड प्लेट वाली वो बना ली, बालकनी बना दी, वो क्या कहते हैं रेलिंग, हाँ तब वो कंस्पिक्यूअस है, नहीं तो छुपा के रखने में तो कोई कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन नहीं. ओके, हाँ जी, इट कैन रीच टू ग्रुप लेवल आल्सो, स्टेट लेवल एज इफ नहीं स्टेट लेवल पे नहीं, पॉलिटिकल लेवल पे है, जैसे कि मायावती ने हाथी बनवाए वहाँ पे, वो बिल्कुल है, और पॉलिटिकल लेवल पे जो सरदार पटेल वाला वो बनवाया गया, यस वो, लेकिन वो स्टेट लेवल पे कहाँ हुआ, वो तो मतलब पॉलिटिकल पार्टी है, और ये जो नई पार्लियामेंट बना रही न्यू विस्टा, हाँ अरे वो तो आप समझ लो कि ये एक पॉलिटिकल सिंबल है डेफिनेटली, कि किसने बनवाया है. अब जैसे कि नेहरू मेड आईआईटीज आईएम्स बनवाए ज़्यादा, ठीक है, यहाँ पे ओके, तो वैसी वाली बात है कि स्टेटस सिंबल क्या होगा. इम्पैक्ट ऑन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस, द फर्स्ट वन इज इन सम सोसाइटीज इट एक्ट्स एज लेवलिंग मैकेनिज्म. तो यू कैन टॉक अबाउट लाइक कैसे लेवलिंग मैकेनिज्म की तरह एक्ट कर रहा है. पोर्टलैच में रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज इज हैपनिंग. सेकंड, हाउ इट इज इम्पैक्टिंग डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस. सेकंड केस इज you can talk about the Marxist perspective, accumulation of resources and virtual shortage or deficit. Reality में deficit नहीं है, but it's only because of somebody has accumulated a lot more, it has led to deficit. Somebody is controlling more than what he or she requires. ठीक है, तो Marxist would say कि famine, तो बोले कि famine अगर आप normal government के point of view से देखो तो famine is something that is shortage of कोई flood आ गया या कुछ आ गया जिसकी वजह से खाने की shortage आ गई, so it has led to famine. Marx would explain that it is not because of any climate, it's not a climate disaster, but it's only because some people have greater access to these resources than others. कुछ लोगों ने बहुत ज्यादा अपने लिए accumulate करके रखा हुआ है, जिसकी वजह से a virtual shortage or deficit has been created in the market. Okay, so many times when the prices of certain essential goods like onions and all that increases, so government immediately becomes alert, and कई जगह पे जहाँ पे hoarders हैं, they start raiding them कि उन्होंने market में virtual shortage तो नहीं create कर दिया है. Marx would explain it like this only, and it's only because of conspicuous consumption that you will be trying to accumulate more and more resources. Okay, then it also creates what you can say reference groups. Okay, reference group as if reference group is that group जिसके आप member बनना चाहते हो, the group which you aspire to be a member of. So reference group, आप किसी conspicuous consumption वाले देखते हो, maybe somebody living in 600 गज वाले घर में रह रहा है, 3000 square feet के घर में रह रहा है, तो you basically aspire कि मैं भी एक दिन I'll be making a house like this, or I'll also be having a car like this, something like this. So this creates what is called as bandwagon effect. bandwagon effect आप समझते हो कि भेड़ चाल जिसको कहते हैं. Okay, and most of these products जो जिसको लेके conspicuous consumption है, they are run by bandwagon effect. Apple iPhone 14 launch होगा, so there will be queue outside Apple showroom. Why for? Means इसका purpose क्या है? It's like कि ये conspicuous consumption का object है. If somebody else is having, I should too possess it. Okay, so the reason is not that I want to possess it because of some reason. The reason is if somebody else is having, I should too have it. Okay, and that is what is called as the bandwagon effect. एक के पीछे एक चलते ही जा रहे हैं. Okay, and they all want that particular piece of object. Okay, next, Marx would also say, एक just example है कि जो philanthropy भी है modern societies में, जो charities organize करते हैं, that's also an act of conspicuous consumption. Okay, आपने basically decide किया कि मेरे को 5000 कंबल बांटने हैं, तो isn't it an act of conspicuous consumption because you will be first, एक ट्रक आएगा और उसमें वो objects to be distributed will be kept, and then you will be distributing it. Now this philanthropy is an act of conspicuous consumption because it is raising your status in the society, but according to Marx it will delay the rise of, or it will prohibit or kind of postpone the revolts, क्योंकि आपने conspicuous consumption आपने redistribute किया, so it will make people believe, or the proletariat believe, that the मालिक जो है, जो the one who is controlling the resources, it's kind of, he is a kind person, he is redistributing in the society, so this might lead to postponement of the revolt. Okay, so this is the impact on distributive justice. ये एक structure है, just use it and frame your answer once. Yes, सेम कुछ, लेकिन इससे मतलब कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन को टैक्स ले रहा है, उससे क्या फर्क पड़ा? नहीं तो स्टेट इसमें एक्ट ऑफ कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन में है. अरे बहुत ही ज्यादा इकोनॉमिकल स्टेटमेंट चला जाएगा, मतलब ठीक है, व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज करेक्ट, बट आंसर में यहाँ पे कोट करना थोड़ा सा एक्सप्रेस करना थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा. व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज कंप्लीटली करेक्ट. हाँ जी, मार्क्स के हिसाब से तो कैपिटलिस्ट इविल है, उसमें तो आप देयर इज नो इफ एंड बट, यस। तो मार्क्स में टाटा और कैपिटल, सॉरी टाटा और रिलायंस में कोई फर्क नहीं है, टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, कोई फर्क नहीं। कैपिटलिस्ट है तो उसने अननेसेसरी एक्यूमुलेशन ऑफ रिसोर्स करके कुछ बांट दिया तो क्या बांटा, ठीक है। डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस का मतलब होता है कि फेयरनेस इन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, ठीक है। एक सेकंड, फेयरनेस मींस कि देखो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस को अगर इस तरीके से देखा जाए, सपोज इफ यू गेट द राइट टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट द रिसोर्सेज, ओके, तो यू शुड बी डूइंग इट अज्यूमिंग दैट यू आर एट द बॉटम मोस्ट लेवल। ये जॉन रॉल्स का आइडिया है, ओके। सो अगर आप उस तरीके का एक पॉलिसी बनाओ ये अज्यूम करके कि इफ आई एम एट द बॉटम मोस्ट लेवल आई शुड गेट अ फेयर डील, तो तभी आप सही पॉलिसी बना पाओगे। दैट इज रिलेटेड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस। दैट मींस कुछ सेट एक देयर इज अ पाई एंड दैट हैज टू बी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड इन एन नंबर ऑफ पीपल, तो वो किस रेशियो में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो दैट एवरीबॉडीज नीड्स आर सैटिस्फाइड। तो रिसोर्स के डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में कितनी इक्वालिटी है, कितनी पैरिटी है, कितनी ट्रांसपेरेंसी है, कितना फेयरनेस है, ओके। सोशल जस्टिस में तो सिर्फ रिसोर्स की बात थोड़ी ना करते हैं यार, उसमें तो रिस्पेक्ट, पावर, उसमें एनीथिंग मींस एनीथिंग रिलेटेड टू द सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स, यस। थोड़ा तेज, हाँ। रेफरेंस ग्रुप क्या है? रेफरेंस ग्रुप इज दैट ग्रुप जिसके आप मेंबर बनना चाहते हो, जिसके जैसा आप होना चाहते हो, ओके। फॉर एग्जांपल लबासना, द वंस हु आर ट्रेनिंग लबासना आर योर रेफरेंस ग्रुप राइट नाउ, okay। or when I say the idea of Sanskritization, so the higher caste whom the lower caste is imitating in order to be equated at par with the higher caste, it's the reference group। हर रेफरेंस ग्रुप का बिल्कुल डिफरेंट होगा। अगर आप क्लास सिस्टम में हो तो कंस्पिक्यूअस आइटम ब्रांडेड ऑब्जेक्ट्स होंगे, सम मटेरियल ऑब्जेक्ट्स। क्लास सिस्टम में हो तो इट विल बी सम डिफरेंट थिंग, इवन द सीक्रेट थ्रेड कैन बी द कंस्पिक्यूअस आइटम। हां, सॉरी, नहीं नहीं, वो कंस्पिक्यूअस कहां से है? वो तो बेसिक नीड्स है। अब आज के टाइम पे आपके पास एसी है तो क्या क्या बड़ा है? मोबाइल बेसिक नीड है, लेकिन आपका मोबाइल 10,000 रुपए का है या 10 लाख रुपए का, वो फर्क करता है, ओके। तो मोबाइल तो वीवो के भी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन कई लोग ब्लैकबेरी का फोन लेके उसमें डायमंड एम्बेडेड कराते हैं उसको, तो दैट्स अ कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन। मेरा जितने का मेरा मोबाइल है, कितने लोगों का अपना कवर होता है उतने का। बैंडवेगन आसिफ, अरे यार, मतलब आप अगर आप एप्पल खरीद रहे हो, हाँ तो बैंडवेगन है, हाँ, आपने सोचा हुआ लग रहा है कि आईफोन 14 लेना है। हाँ, ये बैंडवेगन ही है, यस, ठीक है, क्योंकि एप्पल का जो यूटिलिटी है, और 13 और 14 और उसमें तो कोई खास डिफरेंस है नहीं, तो एवरीबॉडी हु इज बाइंग 14 इट्स नॉट बाइंग फॉर इट्स यूटिलिटी, इट्स ओनली द ब्रांड वैल्यू। जी, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ नहीं यार, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ तो एक ही डायमेंशन की बात कर रहे हैं ना, यहाँ पे अलग-अलग एस्पेक्ट्स में है। एक जगह पे आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट लेवलिंग मैकेनिज्म आल्सो, ओके। यहाँ पे पोलर एग्जांपल्स हैं, एक जगह पे कंस्पिक्यूअस कंजम्पशन की वजह से रिडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन भी हो रहा है एंड सोसाइटी इज गेटिंग लेवलिंग मैकेनिज्म की तरह कर रहा है, एगलिटेरियनिज्म एम्फसाइज किया जा रहा है। एक जगह पे एक्यूमुलेशन ऑफ रिसोर्स भी हो रहा है, ओके। ऐसे कभी बनानी पड़ेगी मेरे को डिस्ट्रीब्यूटिव जस्टिस। हाँ, फेयरनेस इन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ रिसोर्स, दैट्स सिंपल एज़ दैट, बस यही है। मतलब इसमें इसे बहुत कोई बड़ा कांसेप्ट नहीं है ये, ठीक है। यू कैन राइट द कंक्लूजन आल्सो। मतलब आप इसको इस तरीके कंक्लूड कर सकते हो कि दैट वी कैन से दैट कि इकोनॉमी इज इंटरट्वाइंड, और इट शोज द इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ कल्चरल एलिमेंट्स एंड इकोनॉमी इज इंटरट्वाइंड विद पॉलिटिक्स एंड पावर, ओके। इकोनॉमी एंड पॉलिटिक्स दे गो हैंड इन हैंड, और पावर गोज इन हैंड इन हैंड। एक क्वेश्चन और था, दैट इज सेक्रेड एंड प्रोफेन प्रोवाइड्स एन अल्टरनेटिव टू सेक्युलराइजेशन, क्या किसका? अरे यार, इट इट क्लियरली डिस्प्लेस द इंटीग्रेटेड एस्पेक्ट ऑफ कल्चर, integrated aspect of culture, economy is clearly intertwined with politics and power, ठीक है। So the next question, that is secularization thesis, secret profane hypothesis provides alternative to secularization. Here in this case, first you define what is secularization. Define secularization, this idea was given by Brian Wilson, and saying that with modernity the influence or the hold of religion in the common domain will actually decline and religion's appeal would fade away, something like this. So you just define secularization and then mention a few scholars who supported this ideology. So you can talk about Max Weber, that is he talks about rise of rationality with modern time, or Fraser, magic, religion and science. So science will, or scientific explanation will replace the idea of religion, or religion in the modern time is nothing more than a survival, okay। and ऐसे बताने के बाद कि कई सारे scholars और the modernists जो थे, they used to say that कि with time the religion will fade away and what will happen is all the explanations that were once explained by religion will now have a scientific explanation. Phenomena that were once explained by religion will now be having a scientific explanation, and that's why the dependence on religion will actually decline or go away, ठीक है। and ये explain करने के बाद then directly talk about Durkheim, okay। कुछ पॉइंटर्स बोल रहा हूं, आप just लिखते चले जाओ one by one. We have already read this and explained this multiple times. Durkheim did not believe religion is doomed to obsolescence. Durkheim did not believe that religion is doomed to obsolescence. According to his sacred and profane hypothesis, religion is not a worship of supernatural power or beings. Religion is not a worship of supernatural power or being. It is society worshipping itself. It is society worshipping itself. Next point, with modernity, old sacred will be replaced by new sacred. Traditional religion will begin to fade. In modern society. Next point. But a religion of somewhat different type. But a religion of somewhat different type is likely to continue. Religion of somewhat different type is likely to continue. ठीक है. Next, इसके बाद यहाँ पे you can talk about the idea of new type, that is by Maffesoli. He also used the Durkheim sacred and profane idea to explain the new forms of religion that are rising in the society. Okay, and then conclusion. Just write the conclusion. Secularization does seem to be occurring, but with respect to older world religion. New forms of religious expression are also emerging. Last line. According to Durkheim, there is something eternal in religion which is destined to survive in all the time to come. ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे I have seen multiple answers who have quoted postmodernists and all that stuff. ये आपसे पूछा ही नहीं गया है. आपसे सिर्फ ये पूछा गया how sacred and profane is an alternative to secularization idea. So you're not supposed to write postmodernist and Jesus in Disneyland. ये सब आपसे, although it might be suitable, relevant है, लेकिन ये आपसे एक क्वेश्चन की डिमांड थी ही नहीं. It was solely a debate between sacred and profane hypothesis and the secularization theory. So आपको उसी से आंसर करना है. थोड़ा पेज कम लिखो, doesn't matter, but just to fill the page you don't have to write postmodernist क्या बोल रहे, because they do not accept the sacred and profane idea of Durkheim. Okay? नहीं, ये तो पूछ ही नहीं गया ना आपसे. मुद्दा क्या है कि हाउ सेक्युलर एंड प्रोफेन इज एन अल्टरनेटिव टू सेक्युलराइजेशन. सिंपल. तो सेक्युलराइजेशन क्या बोल रहा है कि रिलीजन डिक्लाइन करेगा, एक मॉडर्निटी के साथ खत्म हो जाएगा. सेक्युलर प्रोफेन बोल रहा है कि जब तक सोसाइटी रहेगी तब तक रिलीजन रहेगा एज इट इज. यहाँ वो तो डेफिनेटली आपको वहां पे बताना होगा सोसाइटी वर्शिपिंग इटसेल्फ एंड सेक्रेड क्या है. बस आइडिया ये है कि ओल्ड सेक्रेड विल बी रिप्लेस्ड बाय न्यू सेक्रेड, और व्हाट Durkheim sometimes refers as secular sacred. ओके. एक क्वेश्चन और है, दैट इज मैन इज होमो पॉलिटिकस. ओके, एक मिनट, छोटा सा मॉडल बनाया हुआ, आप लोग लिख लो उसको. जस्ट इट विल टेक 5 minutes. द टर्म होमो पॉलिटिकस was coined by Aristotle. The term homo politicus was coined by Aristotle. It refers to man as a being who engages in political processes, and also whose behavior have political aspects. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ. Man is a social animal. आप जब भी man लिखो ना, तो in order to make it more inclusive, you can write like this. Okay. So it will actually, it's used in such context कि इस context में बोला गया है, but इसका मतलब human है. It's not referring to a single sex. So man is a social animal. Society is an inevitable part of man's life. Living in a society, a man is required to abide by certain norms, regulations, and code of conduct. These norms brings cohesion, solidarity, and continuity in the society. ठीक है. Next paragraph. All the societies, in order to remain viable, must maintain social order. It must develop a set of customs and procedures for making and enforcing decisions, resolving disputes, and regulating the behavior of its member. These cultural arrangements by which society maintains social order or cope with any disruptions is called politics. Politics is civilized social order for large group cooperation based on a shared value system to enhance groups survival chance. Next paragraph. These arrangements, although of different types, although of different types, are universal. Are universal. That is, they occur in all the societies. That is, they occur in all the societies. It is a kind of agreement. It is a kind of agreement between people so that they can live together in groups peacefully. So that they can live together in groups peacefully. Next paragraph, the idea of Dunbar's number. Okay, just like this. According to Robert Dunbar, the size of human brain, is adaptable to manageable group size, of about 150 people. A manageable large scale civilized social group larger than 150 people could not exist sustainably. To enhance group survival, the groups invented politics. For large scale cooperation based on shared values. Okay, concluding paragraph. To conclude, it can be said that politics is a result of people living together, and hence is universal and inevitable. This is what makes a man homo politicus. Okay. So let's start with unit 2.1. Culture. So we have been reading about culture like so many times throughout the initial theories, and then politics, economy, religion. These all are elements of culture and all other features. Now whatever we have read, we'll try to consolidate it here. So the word culture actually was derived from a Latin word which means to cherish. Colere is the root word of culture, and the meaning of this word is to cherish something that is kind of very much close to us. It's a part of our identity, or you can say that it shapes our identity, and it's like inseparable from us. Whatever we are, or howsoever we behave, and how our perception is shaped, or how we perceive somebody else, it all depends on the culture that we are a part of, and that's why it's the inseparable part of a man's identity. Okay, so in this context, we have read several definitions of culture. Remember Tyler's definition? What does it say? That complex whole consisting of knowledge, belief, customs, moral, art, and law, and any other habits or capabilities which a man acquires being a part of society. Okay, so this is the idea of Tyler. Then Malinowski's definition. Yeah. उसके बाद या देखो अगर definition नहीं याद आ रही है तो at least remember the theory. So you can just talk about that. It's an apparatus for satisfaction of biological and derived needs, and that would work very good for मतलब वो कहीं ना कहीं उसने ये बात बोली होगी culture के बारे में, and you can quote it with the name of Malinowski. अब इस बात पे कोई मेरे को गीट्स की definition बताएगा. Historically transmitted, embedded in symbols, और तो अब अपनी definition अब वहां से ठीक है. So these definitions, or there is a definition that we have not yet read, the definition of Hershkovitz. It says that culture is man-made part of environment. Okay, that is one environment that was created by nature, that we have not created it, but a particular part of that environment that we have created by ourselves, that is culture. So the environment in this classroom is not natural. It's something that we have created through our cultural knowledge. Okay, this lights, this television, the air conditions, and all that. That is something that we have created through our cultural knowledge, and that's why that is what he says, that it's a man-made part of the environment. So its culture is a universal aspect of human beings, and every society has it. No matter how simple it is, it might be very simple, it might be complex, but something that is universal. हर society का होगा ही होगा culture. So you can say that कि society is just like the hardware, and culture provides the software for running it. बिना software के that hardware is functionless. Okay, like if you have the computer, no matter whatever computer that you possess, if there is no operating system in it, is it going to run? No. So culture is that operating system of the society. Okay, in which if you train or if you ask the society or the instruments to behave in a particular manner, they follow it, and based on which all the instruments they engage in some kind of social interaction, and that is how the society functions. Okay, so every society in order to function must have a shared set of belief systems and values, which is called as culture. So this culture might be simple. मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा simple का मतलब है कि there is no distinction, right? Means family or politics, economics, and all that, they are not much differentiated. And a complex cultural system like we have. So religion institution is different, economic institutions are different, political institutions are completely different, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's see if we summarize the idea of culture according to Ruth Benedict, so culture is what we have, what we do, and what we think. These are the three combination. Means what we have, that is the material aspects that we possess. It's also representative of our culture. How we act, that's also representative of our culture, and what we think. Okay, that's a combination. So it's, you can simply अगर एक लाइन में किसी को बताना हो कि culture क्या है, so it's the way of our life, how we live. Okay, that is the expression of our culture, how we are supposed to, or how we express ourselves, how we live, the food we eat, everything. So the way of life is simply called as the culture. So let's see some features or nature of culture. The first one, the culture is historically created, designed for living. Historically created, designed for living. That means a design of living that is not created immediately. It's a result of accumulation of our experiences since long time. Okay, हजारों साल से आपने कुछ experiences accumulate किया and that has become a part of your daily life. This is the first one. Second one is it's unique to human species. Although it's a debatable statement, but for the time being, it's unique to human species. So for the time being, we can assume that this statement is true. Sociocultural anthropology में ये statement सही माना जाता है. But when we'll be reading primatology, that is in physical anthropology, talking about the non-human primates, we are primates. Okay, it's an order of species. So in that case, there are several non-human primates like chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorilla. So it's believed by several primatologists that culture is not something uniquely human, but also shared by chimpanzees, or they also have some culture. Or orangutans or bonobos or gorillas also have some culture. So we will be looking at that debate between sociocultural anthropologists and the primatologist. But for the time being, let's assume that this statement is true because we need to go into primatology and then वहाँ पे हम लोग डिटेल में देखेंगे. Okay, next. Culture is non-genetic. That is non-genetic का मतलब that it's not hardwired in our body. It's something that we learn. Okay, that is inculcated into us. So Talcott Parsons make a statement saying that the birth of a child is similar to a barbaric invasion to the society. I hope you are able to understand the metaphor of this statement. The birth of a child is similar to a barbaric invasion to the society. Barbaric invasion, barbaric का मतलब जो जिसके पास culture नहीं हो, a person without culture. And invasion means that there is somebody who is attacking the society who has no culture. So he compares a newborn child as a barbarian, a person without culture, and he adds the society is ready with its weapons of culture. To counter that attack, society has already the weapons of culture. So if they do not train that child, then that barbaric person can bring chaos in the society. So in order to protect itself, the society defends itself through culture. So वो society कैसे क्या करेगी? उस barbaric individual को socialize कर देगी. It will socialize the barbaric individual, and by doing this, by socialization, it will turn the barbaric individual into a civilized individual. Are you getting this? So that's why he compares the birth of a child to a barbaric invasion to the society. Okay, it's a non-genetic aspect. And the last one, it has unity as well as diversity. Unity as well as diversity का मतलब, that is, you might find same elements of culture across the world. That means every culture might have some aspect of family, some aspect of marriage, some aspect of religion. Okay, but different types of family, different types of marriage, different types of religion. The overall broader categories are more or less same, but the practices in that broader categories will be different. So हर culture में there is an aspect of marriage or an aspect of how male and female are supposed to get intimate and reproduce. So there will be an aspect, but there will be different ways of doing it. So some societies might go for promiscuous mating, some societies might go for polyandry, some societies might go for monogamy, or some societies might go for polygamy. But there will be definitely a mechanism that would ensure that male and female they get intimate and reproduce, maintaining the continuity of the society. So this is the unity, and different aspects of that mechanisms will be the diversity. So these are the that is why culture has unity as well as diversity. Now, culture is shared. So anything that has to be called as culture, the first criteria for that to be called as a culture is that it should be a shared behavior. अगर कोई चीज आप अकेले कर रहे हो, that means so in that case it's an individual behavior. It's uniquely yours. It's not a part of culture. Remember culture alternatives and culture universals. Okay, and then there are culture specialists. So these are the aspects that a person learns from culture. अब वो हो सकता है कि that it might be shared by everyone or shared by a specialist group of people, but definitely has to be shared one. ठीक है? And this shared aspect of culture is the reason that we are able to communicate, or it's the reason that we are able to establish solidarity in the society, or it brings cohesion. अगर shared aspect नहीं होगा तो then there is difficult to establish any kind of communication, there is difficult to establish any kind of solidarity or cohesion. The person might feel alienated. So whenever you go to a foreign country, you feel alienated because you are missing that shared aspects, which usually आप इंडिया में कहीं पे भी जाओगे so you don't feel that alienation. Why? Because there is a lot of shared aspects. No matter how different that particular society or culture might be, you will find somebody who will understand your language. किसी न किसी तरीके से आप उससे communicate कर पाओगे. The symbols are also shared, right? But you say you can plan a solar trip in India, but it's very difficult. It's very less probability that you will be planning a solar trip to say China. Okay, why? Because the language is completely unintelligible. Moreover, people rarely speak English also there. So उस case में it's very difficult to communicate with those people. And culture is also very different. आप बहुत ज़्यादा नॉनवेज खाते होगे तो चिकन मटन खाते होगे. Okay, वहाँ पे तो what not. तो फिर अब उस case में again you feel that alienation there because any of the cultural practices that you follow or symbols that you follow is not shared by the people there. And this phenomena, whenever an individual enters into a altogether new culture, is called as culture shock. Okay, wherein you might be entering into a new culture and you find something very different and you feel that alienation. This is called as culture. So this idea or this term was first used by a scholar named Oberg, and he used it specifically with respect to the ethnographers. कि जब भी ethnographers they will be, because it's the job of the anthropologists or the ethnographers to study simple societies or the tribal societies, and when they end up in the tribal societies, so initially they are with a lot of excitement. And this might happen with you guys also. You get a chance to, well, you're very excited for it, foreign trip to Italy or France or something like that. बहुत कुछ सोच के जा रहे हो, ऐसा होगा वैसा होगा पता नहीं. But when you land up in that particular place, you find that you are not able to relate with those objects, that kind of culture. You're not feeling any kind of warmth in that culture, and that makes you feel what is called as cultural shock. And ethnographer also, he might be very excited, and he might basically end up मतलब किसी tribal area में जाएगा and immediately उसको लगेगा कि ये कहाँ फंस गए. Okay, and that is what the culture shock that he explains, that he experiences. And in such case, there will be a lot of physiological and psychological symptoms that will come up. So the person might feel irritated, okay, irritability, or a lot of hunger and thirst. भूख बहुत लगती है. Okay, you feel like you can eat anything. अब बहुत खाओगे. Okay, that is in stress. And maybe boredom, headache or nausea. Such kind of problems might come up. Or maybe a sense of confusion or a sense of loss of esteem. अब आप किसी तरीके से पैसे जोड़ के आपने यूएस की ट्रिप मारी या स्विट्जरलैंड चले गए, and then आपको स्विट्जरलैंड में लोगों के लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड देख के लगा मैं कितना गरीब हूँ यार. And that is the culture shock that you will feel. कि भाई साहब यहाँ पे तो टैक्सी वाला मर्सिडीज चला रहा है, and I just bought a Wagoner at my place. So that is the culture shock. Okay, so due to which you might feel a sense or a loss of esteem also. There are 4 major stages of culture shock. The first one is the honeymoon stage. In this stage, the person is very excited. एकदम खुश है कि नए कल्चर को स्टडी करने जा रहे हैं, मजा आएगा and all that. That is the honeymoon stage. And the second stage is, ये लगता है शादी के हिसाब से लिखे हुए हैं, uncertainty stage. Okay, so here more and more different aspects of culture crop up. ऐसा लग रहा है कि कल्चर की जगह कपल का लिख देना तब भी सही है. More and more different aspects of couple crop up. उसको लगता है कि सही डिसीजन लिया नहीं लिया. Okay, so here what will happen? Frustration will start to build up in this stage, uncertainty stage. The third stage is adjustment stage. Okay, so here in the adjustment stage, the frustration starts to get subdued. मतलब मजबूरी अब रहना ही पड़ेगा. Okay, so the final stage is the last stage, that is called as the acceptance stage. So in the acceptance stage, that it comes with, specifically with respect to ethnography, it comes with a realization that complete understanding of the culture is not possible. Again. So in that case, you don't have to understand, you completely relate yourself to the new culture, and due to this fourth stage, a particular phenomena develops which is called as biculturalism. Biculturalism means you can actually, now you have got the capability to exist in a completely different culture. Okay, you have become bicultural. ये भी यार मेरे को सीरियसली लग रहा है कि इसने कपल के हिसाब से लिख दिया और यहाँ पे कल्चर शॉक बता दिया. So this biculturalism is something wherein the ethnographer actually develops an understanding for the new culture as well, and will be understanding the value system of that culture, and will make sure that he develops or adopts a relativist behavior. But that's not the end. The ethnographer will face a culture shock again when he moves out of the new culture, host culture, and lands up in his culture. Okay, because he has adapted to the new culture, maybe 2 साल 3 साल के लिए वहाँ रहा, but finally going back to one's own culture, that's a new culture shock for him. Okay, क्योंकि वहाँ पे अब उसके culture में बहुत कुछ change हो चुका है. Things have modified. People have started behaving in a different manner. People don't recognize him, and he does not feel that sense of welcome attitude or that warmth. He might lose his social network. Okay, due to which he might again feel alienated entering into his own culture. So that's a culture shock, just like this. Right, the heading culture is a shared phenomena. The shared aspect of culture makes our life less complicated. Makes our lives less complicated. It predicts how others will think and behave. It predicts how others will think and behave. Degree of sharing culture varies from culture to culture. Degree of sharing culture varies from culture to culture. There is a greater homogeneity. There is a greater homogeneity in simple cultures or primitive cultures, and heterogeneity in complex cultures. Heterogeneity in complex cultures. The complex cultures might have several subcultures as a subset. Might have several subcultures as a subset. Okay, like I think culture shock. Culture shock. The term was coined by Oberg. Term was coined by Oberg. It refers to uncertainty and discomfort. Refers to uncertainty and discomfort experienced by an ethnographer. Experienced by an ethnographer during field work in a different culture. doing field work in a different culture, confronted by a new environment, confronted by a new environment, strangers, and many new behaviors, all ethnographers react with unusual anxiety, anger, sadness, fear, or disorientation. It tends to get resolved. Over time, but may be reawakened. When ethnographers return to their own cultures. They discover that single quote normal now has become strange. In light of their changed perspectives. Right? Symptoms. First, homesickness. Second, boredom. Third, nausea. Then excessive amount of sleep, irritability. Compulsive drinking. Next, a sense of confusion. And last, loss of self-esteem. कई लोगों को यूपीएससी में आने के बाद कल्चर शॉक लग जाता है ना. All these kind of things happen. Compulsive drinking, compulsive smoking, and sense of loss of esteem. ये अपने आप को मैं बहुत 30 मार्क्स का समझता था, यहाँ पे क्या हो गया. And now the marks धीरे-धीरे ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स की कॉपीज आने लग गई हैं. And marks are in this range somewhere 15, 20, 22.5 इस तरीके से नंबर जा रहे हैं. So I believe they might also be thinking कि इतने कम तो मैंने भी नहीं सोचे थे. And that's, but you should not take it that way. कि self esteem. Most probably you will get the copies also by Thursday. Almost done है. 15-20 copies are remaining. So you should take it very positively. आपके स्कोर जितना भी खराब है उससे इंस्पिरेशन लेना है कि भाई अगला पेपर सही से देना है. ओके, एंड दैट शुड नॉट, मतलब इतना ये कोई मेन पेपर थोड़ी ना है, बहुत सारे और टेस्ट आएंगे. ओके, सो टेक इट इन अ वेरी लाइट नोट. बहुत ज्यादा सीरियसली लेना कि सेकंड में अगली बार टेस्ट ही देना नहीं है. दैट शुड नॉट हैपन. नेक्स्ट राइट, देयर आर फोर स्टेजेस ऑफ कल्चर शॉक. फर्स्ट, हनीमून स्टेज. कल्चर इज न्यू एंड एक्साइटिंग. Second, the uncertainty stage. Due to more difficult aspects of host culture. Third, adjustment stage. The frustration gets subdued and gradual acceptance begins. And last, acceptance stage is the realization that complete understanding is not necessary to function and thrive. Last heading क्या? होस्ट कल्चर क्या? अच्छा, होस्ट का मतलब होता है कि जिस कल्चर, मतलब जो जहां जिसके यहाँ आप जा रहे हो, दैट इज, सो देयर इज अ गेस्ट, द अदर वन इज द होस्ट. सो एथनोग्राफर जिस कल्चर में जाएगा दैट विल बी कॉल्ड एज द होस्ट कल्चर. ओके, बाय कल्चरलिज्म. Spending weeks and months in a different culture can provide new insights into how local people think, act and feel. Biculturalism is the capacity of an individual to think and perceive in category of one's own culture, as well as in categories of host culture. Okay, so this is biculturalism. Now the next idea is culture is integrated. All the elements of culture, they are connected to each other. Okay, and none of them can be understood in isolation. Okay, they all impact each other. So there is a model called as Barrel's model given by Haviland. which was used to explain culture as an integrated aspect. Okay, or culture, all the elements of culture are integrated with respect to each other. So this can be asked as a 10-mark question also. Culture is an integrated phenomena. Okay, so you have to explain that how all the elements of culture functions with respect to each other, or they basically impact and in turn get impacted by the other elements. Okay, so we have already talked about this, but just thoda sa improvement is made, that is infrastructure, structure and superstructure. Environment. So here so simple say environment is impacting all the aspects of culture, that is infrastructure and superstructure. Okay, and in turn getting impacted by it. The arrow is open on both the sides. And in the same way, infra is impacting structure, infra is impacting superstructure, and in turn getting impacted by it. And structure is impacting superstructure, and in turn getting impacted by it. That's the integrated aspect of culture. So we have already read key infrastructure kya hai. Okay, that is mainly related to the mode of production or mode of subsistence, how the society arranges its food or material needs. Then structure is the social aspect of the society, how the society is socially organized. And then superstructure is the belief, values, the intangible aspect, the knowledge, custom, moral values, beliefs. All this comes under superstructure, and they all are interconnected. Moreover, they're not just interconnected with each other; they're also getting impacted by the environment. So environment provides the resource for a particular society to exploit. Okay, and you can quote one example here. That is the example of anyone. So here the example is Simbaga community. Remember this flowchart? So how the economy, marriage, and warfare, and also the ritual aspect, that is they are connected to each other, isn't it? So marriage connected, economy connected, political aspect, that is warfare is connected, and also the religious aspects is linked to each other. Moreover, the ecology is also connected. Okay. The next, ये हो गया, लिखिए आप लोग all क्या हुआ? The next one is culture is dynamic in nature. So in this case, dynamic means culture definitely changes, okay, or it changes with time. And now we have two approaches to understand culture change. Mainly, we have studied it in the theories. The first one is through invention, evolutionism. Okay, the second one is through imitation or diffusion. Okay, so culture definitely has some flexibility or should have some flexibility to change. So, but it should be optimum. Whenever a culture is too rigid, that is too rigid to change, so then in that case it might not be able to cater the needs of the individual. Okay, so अगर culture बिल्कुल भी change नहीं हो रहा, environment change हो गई, time change हो गया, in that case the culture might not be able to cater the needs, and that might people might completely reject that cultural practices. For example, if there is dictatorship and it's not trying to reform its ways, one day will come when the people will ultimately revolt. They will overthrow that. So revolutions will happen, and it has happened. French Revolution, American Revolution, in fact the Indian national freedom struggle. So suppose करो, if Britishers would have agreed to the first call of independence when India called for dominion status, so हो सकता है कि शायद अभी तक हम लोग British के dominion में थे. Okay, like there are certain islands in Pacific which are the dominions of US and Britain and France. Okay, but they did not agree. They were very rigid. कि कुछ नहीं देंगे, तो क्या हुआ कि कुछ बचा ही नहीं. So that is too rigid. Might not be able to cater the needs of the people, and in that situation, what might happen that people will completely overthrow that culture. So there will not be a change in the structure, but change of the structure altogether. So change in में क्या होता है कि अगर flexible है, तो थोड़ा बहुत modification करके it will adjust. But if it is too rigid, which is not allowing change in the structure, in such case there will be a complete change of the structure. एक नया structure ही आ जाएगा. Are you getting this idea? Now, if it is too flexible, then also it's a problem. If it is too flexible, then it will not be able to maintain its unique characteristics or unique identity. हर बात पे चेंज होता जा रहा है, इतना फ्लेक्सिबल है, सो कोई यूनिक आइडेंटिटी बचेगी ही नहीं. ओके, इट शुड नॉट बी टू रिजिड, एट द सेम टाइम इट शुड नॉट बी टू फ्लेक्सिबल. इट शुड हैव अ, और टू फ्लेक्सिबल होगा तो देन यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड द सोशल फैक्ट्स वुड नॉट वर्क इन सच केस, बिकॉज़ द कल्चर इज टू फ्लेक्सिबल, इट कैन अकोमोडेट एनी सेट ऑफ वैल्यूज, एनी काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स. ओके, सो टू रिजिड एंड टू फ्लेक्सिबल, बोथ द केसेस आर वेरी मच हार्मफुल फॉर द एक्सिस्टेंस ऑफ a particular culture. It should be optimally flexible. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट लास्ट वन, दैट इज कल्चर इज adaptive in nature. Adaptive means it's very related to whenever an environment will change, the culture will adapt. Okay, the culture will correspondingly adapt in order to make sure that the participant of the culture, they are capable of surviving in that environment. Remember the definition of Malinowski, that it gives us the capability to cope up with the challenges that environment poses on us. Or the idea of Leslie White, he is also saying that culture is nothing more than a survival mechanism of humans, and it will give us the capacity to survive in the environment. How? By getting more and more energy. So it's a mechanism for extracting energy from the ecological resources. So here in this case, culture is adaptive in nature. But is it only adaptive? Isn't our culture maladaptive as well? That is leading to exploitation or over exploitation of the environment. So हमारे culture में basically we are kind of consumerist culture में believe करते हैं. हमारी पूरी की पूरी economy, the world global economy is based on consumption of resources. अब उस केस में if a country GDP is not rising at a regular rate, that country might be said to be underdeveloped. ठीक है, और might be suffering from recession अगर उसकी GDP नहीं बढ़ रही है. और for example, India was said to be cursed by Hindu growth rate. Remember Hindu growth rate आप लोगों ने first second 5 year plans पढ़ा होगा. तो Hindu growth rate means 3 to 4% of growth of GDP, not even beating the inflation. So now what this kind of culture is promoting us? You consume as much as possible, not consume as much as you need, but as much as possible. Because if you don't consume, then the GDP will not increase, and if the GDP does not increase, then the country might face recession. Country might lose its economic strength. So there is a stigma. क्या भी वो छोटी सी country है Japan, okay, and it has a GDP of say I don't remember approximately 6 to 7 trillion dollar approx 5 trillion. So $5 trillion. So in that case, $5 trillion economy, छोटी सी country है, few million people or few crores people, but consuming $5 trillion. Then a country of size of India, 130 crore people, and an economy of hardly 2.5 trillion. $3 trillion. 2.5 है या 3 है? चलो जितना भी है यार, मतलब with a target of $5 trillion. Okay, by 2024 या 5. Let's see. इलेक्शन के एक साल बाद ही बोला है कि अगर नहीं जीते तो बोल देंगे देखो हम होते तो कर देते. So see now what here it is not talking about how that $5 trillion economy will be distributed. Will it be an equitable distribution, or will it be cornered by Ambani, Adani or anybody else? So that actually says that our culture is trying to, or it's kind of persuading us to over exploit the environment. ठीक है. Then there are instances like COVID-19. It's a clear case example, a clear cut example of over or maladaptiveness of culture. ठीक है, कि culture they say कि कुछ भी खा लेंगे, अब कुछ भी खा लेंगे, अब वो जा जाके basically they are catching bats, they are catching anything, snakes and all, wet animal market. You must have read that or saw that documentary. So that wet animal market, it shows how several animals, they are kept in cages one over the other, and the drops of fluids they pass from one animal to another and so on and so forth. But and just not just the drops of fluid, they are also exchanging several microorganisms, and they are clearly creating a kind of area जहाँ पे कई सारी zoonotic diseases, several new zoonotic diseases might emerge. According to a report, between 1946 to 2004, more than 200 new zoonotic diseases have been reported, and this report was by some agency of Britain. Okay, so these are because of our cultural practices only. And moreover, if you remember in the orientation time, I have discussed how agriculture के साथ-साथ several new diseases would definitely come up because that promoted sedentary lifestyle, and in such case, it was the first time we were coming in contact with our excreta. Okay, because इससे पहले mobility थी, so never ever the excreta or the human refuse accumulated at place, and this excreta was the storehouse, or it was the breeding ground of several insects, mosquitoes, flies, then sedentary lifestyle, domestication of animals, and then in such case we were also coming up with in contact with several other new microorganisms who were earlier living on the animal's body. Then stagnant living, we had a stagnant water, एक pit dig करके उसमें पानी स्टोर किया, so that stagnant water was also a breeding ground of several insects. Then surplus, so surplus was the source of rodents, or surplus attracted several rats, rodents, and they were the ones who passed on plague to us. Moreover, everything was limited to a particular place, but then we started trading, and when we started trading, what happened? Not only the grains were moving from one place to another place, but also the microorganisms, and diseases also started to spread. And it was the first time we started creating a disease beyond the level of epidemic to the level, beyond the level of sporadic or endemic disease to epidemic and pandemic. Okay, and globalization की वजह से pandemics, we have experienced several pandemics. Okay, HIV is the one, COVID-19 is the latest. So all this is because of culture. And then global warming, ozone holes, these are the examples of maladaptiveness of culture कि हम लोगों ने over exploit किया. So remember there is a date, what is called as Earth Overshoot Day. So we have certain resource which we can consume in a year. And what actually is happening, we are consuming that particular resource by August someday. हर साल वो overshoot day is kind of coming closer to maybe. So we are consuming those resources that are available to us by August only. So मतलब हम over exploit कर रहे हैं पूरे Earth को for remaining 5 months. And that date is gradually shifting forward. Means वो कम नहीं हो रहा, वो delay नहीं हो रहा है. We are increasing our consumption day by day, and over exploiting to a certain extent जहाँ पे it becomes very difficult to restore. Okay, so that clearly shows the maladaptiveness of culture. So that's it for today. Thank you.